Welcome everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I could. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for joining us for this month's community webinar. My name is Catherine Kennedy. I'm a senior researcher at the Michigan Virtual Learning Research Center. I also help to coordinate the research and community webinar and research and community blog for IDCall. If you'd like to be added to this email list for future opportunities, and or if you'd like to contribute research to the blog, please add your email address in the chat area, or you can email me at kkennedy@nivp.org. Today we are honored to have Drs. Amy Garrett-Diggers and Amy Whiteside to talk about their research on online student experiences and perceptions. First, I'd like to introduce our presenters, and then I'll let them get started. And I'm sorry about the choppiness. Can you guys hear me still? Okay, great. I'm at a conference right now, so it's a bit noisy in the background, and I apologize for that. So Amy Garrett-Diggers is an assistant professor in educational leadership at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Formerly a secondary school English teacher, her professional interests include the preparation of educational leaders and the use of technology-enhanced and online learning in K-12 and higher education. Her current research centers on reflective practice, maximizing online learning, and incorporating community professionals into courses through technology. Dr. Garrett-Diggers regularly presents her research at the American Educational Research Association and the Sloan Consortium's annual meeting. And we also have Dr. Amy Whiteside, and she is an assistant professor at the University of Tampa. She specializes in social presence, blended and online learning, technology-enhanced learning, learning environments research, technical and professional communication, and academic writing. Dr. Whiteside's research has been featured within various edited books, including New Directions for Teaching and Learning, and a multitude of journals and periodicals, including Journal of Interactive Online Learning, EDUCAUSE's Review Online, Learning and Leading with Technology, and Sloan C's Best Practices. Thanks again, Amy and Amy, for presenting to the community. Go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Catherine. This is Amy Garrett-Diggers. I did want to step in just before we get started. Amy Whiteside and I are connecting by text, and she is not able to hear anything at the moment. So I don't know if we can do one more quick round of troubleshooting before I present on my own.
This is Rob Darrow. So I'm going to put a phone number in the chat room so then you can call in that way too.
So Rob, is it your suggestion that Amy just uses that number and makes a phone call? Hello? Thanks, Scott, for keeping us all in perspective. Okay, I just sent that information to Amy. Hopefully she'll be able to join us via phone. So,
great.
Glorious.
Well, I think we're getting there.
Okay.
So again, this is Rob Darrow from iNACOL. It sounds like there are other people on the phone, which is great. Just know that you can help us out with sound by clicking on your mute if you're on the phone, because then we don't hear the background noise. Hopefully the other Amy will be able to call in just a second, and we'll get started. Is that now Amy on the phone? Is there somebody else calling in on the phone? If you could say something so that I know if the sound is working. Thanks.
Okay, I'll just get started. This is Amy Garrett-Dickers, and Amy and Rob can work in the chat room to hopefully get her into the site and be able to share with us as well. So as Catherine said, my name is Amy Garrett-Dickers. I am a professor in educational leadership at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. My colleague Amy Whiteside is at the University of Tampa, and we've been doing research in various aspects of online and blended learning we've figured out 12 to 15 years now. So one of what we're here to share with you today is our experience with one research study that's been we conducted in the last little bit of time, specifically around the students' perceptions and expectations and their experiences at the North Carolina Virtual Public School. So we're going to talk a little bit about the study, our research questions, and the participants in their study, but we're really going to focus this conversation today on the three of the key takeaways that we have found in this research. So we're going to talk about how these takeaways have informed our other research in the area of online and blended learning, as well as what we've learned from the research for students, teachers, and administrators. And we also want to provide plenty of opportunities for you to share your own experiences, perceptions, and questions that you may have as well. So in the summer of 2007, the North Carolina Virtual Public School began offering online courses to students across the state. And enrollment in the school increased rapidly from the very beginning. In 2012, the enrollment in the North Carolina Virtual Public School was the second highest of any virtual school in the United States. That dipped a little in 2013, but just from introductory enrollment data for this school year, I think it's heading back up again. The North Carolina Virtual Public School offers nearly 50,000 secondary students over 150 different courses, advanced placement courses, honors courses, traditional, credit recovery, and occupational courses, study courses. If you're familiar with secondary school, advanced placement, of course, is to get to be able to take the tests and get college credit for coursework that you take in high school. Honors courses, traditional courses, credit recovery are courses that are for students who have failed a face-to-face class or an online class, who just have failed a class and need to regain those credits. And occupational courses study are courses specifically for exceptional children or children with special needs who, in most cases, have a face-to-face teacher who's an exceptional children teacher, and then the content course is taught by a North Carolina Virtual Public School teacher. Mostly the interaction in these courses is asynchronous, and although North Carolina Virtual School mainly targets students in grades 9 to 12. There has been, especially in the last year, year and a half, an increase of courses available to students in middle school. And I know in my district there are some middle school students taking a course called Success 101, which is really a soft skills course about organization, time management, things to help them be successful in high school as well as to help them be successful in an online learning environment. Students enroll in North Carolina Virtual School, public schools through their e-learning advisor at their local public school or in their district, and they are currently using both Moodle and Blackboard learning management systems for different courses. Just to give you a little picture, a lot of that information, of course, is available on the North Carolina Virtual Public Schools website. We wanted to give you some context for our study. So just wanted to give you a little bit more context about why we are interested in the North Carolina Virtual Public School as a case study and in learning about students specifically. We both, as I mentioned, have been doing research for 12 to 15 years in online and blended learning and technology-enhanced learning, mostly at higher education. Over the last 4 years, when I took my current position at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington, I met Summer Lewis, who is our additional author on today's webinar, who was unable to be with us today. And she is a North Carolina Virtual Public School teacher as well as a faculty member here at UNCW. And it was a perfect opportunity then to explore K-12 virtual learning. As we learned more about North Carolina Virtual Public School, its size, its situation in the state, the fact that the majority of the teachers who teach in the North Carolina Virtual Public School are also face-to-face teachers, and that the majority of the students were also face-to-face students, we wanted to know more about this mix and what that meant for them. So we designed a large-scale study of teachers and students. For the teachers, we did a survey, focus groups, and interviews, and we designed a survey for students based on that teacher survey that had a mix of demographic, closed choice, Likert scale, and open-ended questions. Our main research questions for the whole project was, what are North Carolina Virtual Public School teachers and students' perceived benefits and challenges of online learning? What are North Carolina Virtual Public Schools teachers and students' perceptions of the social presence model for quality teaching and learning in online environments? Is the social presence model a useful tool for teachers and students? And whether and how teaching in an online environment impacts face-to-face practice. Rather than a typical research report today where I would go research question by research question and talk about what we've learned, we've decided to capitalize on the fact that we're online together and to have this conversation amongst you as well to get some of your perspectives and thoughts. And we also wanted to make sure that we kept we kind of used our time wisely, and instead of taking each question and not being able to finish, we would just focus on those, like I said, those 3 main takeaways. On the last slide of the PowerPoint, which will be available via iNACOL's dissemination efforts, there are 2 specific references where you can find more information about the project as a whole to the publications that we've published in the last year and a half. So one more, a little bit about the participants in the study. This is the student participants. because we are focusing on the student perceptions in today's webinar. The majority of the students that responded to our survey were taking their first few online classes. We categorize that as 1 to 3. So 91.8% of the students who responded were in those first few classes. 91.7% were also taking classes in a face-to-face building. In most cases at the North Carolina Virtual Public School, these students are taking 1 or 2 courses here or there, something that's not offered in their own school or district, an advanced placement class that's not offered, for example, a class for credit recovery if their district or school uses credit recovery, online learning through North Carolina Virtual Public School, etc. There are few students in the North Carolina Virtual Public School who are doing all of their courses online, but the school really does cater to and serve the needs of students who are mostly in a face-to-face building for the majority of their day. Our student participants ranged in age from 12 to 19, and most of the respondents identified as traditional students. And so that means that they're taking a regular class. They're not in credit recovery, or they're not an occupational course of study student. So to date, we have 174 students respond, and we'll talk a little bit more about the efforts that we're taking to get a larger response on a second survey towards the end of this presentation today. So just to get started with a little bit, we had many questions out of those 24 that asked about the students' experiences online. Because at the time that we conducted the survey in spring of 2012, there was very little information out there about what students were saying about their virtual school experiences. So these are some few interesting statistics here, but we wanted to focus on, again, those key takeaways. So 90% of those students communicated directly with their online teacher. And this is something that the North Carolina Virtual Public School sees as one of their pillars of success, is to have their teachers communicate directly with their students on a frequent basis. So students used instant messaging the most inside the learning management system, closely followed by text messages with their teacher, the old-fashioned pick up the phone and talk to someone, and then about 40% listed email, and it was unknown if that was the email through the learning management system or private email. The North Carolina Virtual Public School has specific expectations for their students, such as logging in daily, accessing the website, turning materials in on time, of course, etc. And we asked if their online teachers have specific expectations as well, and they said yes, and talked about some of those as being participation grades, or participating in discussion boards, communicating weekly with their teacher, etc. And as you see here on the slide, 80.6% say that they were able to meet that challenge. The challenges, the ones who said that they were not able to meet that challenge well, talked about technical difficulties, such as when they lost internet at home, or if the internet at school was not able to manage all of the connections at once. If they had computer issues, perhaps some computer issues like we had today with getting connected with people, not having a phone to text their teachers, and having difficulties collaborating with their classmates, etc. So Amy Whiteside, my colleague, is going to take over with talking you through the 3 takeaways that we wanted to share with you from the student expectations survey.
So first, I thought we'd try a little bit of interactivity. Since I don't know if you can hear me, can you all give me a shout out if you can hear me? Oh, good, good, it works, fantastic. So I'm picking up on that old-fashioned pick up the phone message that Amy mentioned. I want to take you through our great unveiling of our 3 takeaways. So as we have the best job in the world as researchers, because we get a chance to really dig through the data and just let it guide us. And these 3 takeaways that we have are really the culmination of what the student voice is thus far. Now, we have a long way to go in our research. We intend to do longitudinal research. We will be doing research in many different areas. But the first big takeaway is that we found that the benefits and challenges were intertwined in many ways. And first we found that some of the challenges, nothing terribly, I guess, mind-shattering. They get distracted, as we all may do as we turn to an online learning situation. They have to learn how to manage that. They have a difficulty without that teacher with them to guide them in ways that they're used to doing in a normal building situation. There may be some questions that the teacher's not answering in a timely manner, but that may be due to how the contracts at NCVPS are designed, in that a building instructor cannot respond to online students in a given timeline. And this may relate to teachers and administrators needing to have very precise guidelines. We'll come back to this as well. As Amy mentioned, there are connectivity issues, as I experienced here today. And of course, it's challenging just to get oriented. We could see the large percentage of students that were first-time online students. And it just takes a while, as we can all relate to get oriented to NCVPS and any online situation. If you look at the benefits, again, this is no great surprise, but just like any of us, students love that freedom to do their homework whenever and whenever they can. They have, and this is our word, of course, but they have this newfound sense of autonomy and responsibility that connects to the last bullet on this slide, too, about getting that taste of the college experience. And the ability to take their coursework not available in their building. So there may be a particular course that they're seeking that is only offered through the NCVPS online opportunity. And this gives them the great opportunity to do that. And on the other side, we may have a population of students, because we do have a population of students, perhaps some of them may classify as at risk, that they have an alternative. So if the building doesn't work for them, if the traditional school setting doesn't work for them, they have another option to complete that coursework and to recover that credit. So takeaway number 2. Oh, sorry. One student comment. In fact, I'm going to give you a bonus comment too. So one student comment, I love hearing the voices of the students come out here. I wish I could share 174 of them for you, but this one is, I had to change my ways of thinking. In the past, I would be motivated by the teachers in the classroom, but with online learning, I had to motivate myself, which was a learning experience that I will use all through life. And the second one, you can take a course at any time, but you have to be on top of everything. I'm seeing a question here. Let's see. Do students complete some type of virtual orientations in the beginning? We are trying to suggest that, as you'll see in just a minute. Right now, they do complete a Getting Started module, and that is the extent of the orientation that I know at this stage. I'll do my best to get to your questions, but they kind of come and go before I can get all the way through them. But if we miss them, please do ask them at the end. And I'll just continue to move through to that second.
The second part of your question, Tiffany, this is Amy Garrett-Dickers. The students do start, some of the courses are year-long courses, so they take over fall and spring. Some take courses just in fall, some just in spring, and then there's some that they take, there are actually quite a lot of students who take courses in the summer, and those are slightly more accelerated. And again, for example, in my district only does summer school through North Carolina Virtual Public School. They don't offer any face-to-face summer school opportunities, whether they're traditional or accelerated or credit recovery courses. Those are only offered through the North Carolina Virtual Public School.
Amy, do you know, I was trying to think through our literature. I'm looking at Scott's question about is anyone conducting similar research. I know we have scoured the literature many times, and we've found some people doing research, but I don't think we found anything quite like what we're doing. Do you Do you have any to add on that?
Not that I recall, and Scott, you know, we have the companion piece, of course, because we have been doing the research with the teachers and with the students, and there were a few most of those end up being dissertations. There have been few published in peer-reviewed journals or even in practitioner journals, but it seems to be that there are a large pocket of students who are working on their doctorate work who are doing dissertations on virtual schools, and some of those are aligned with teachers and some of those aligned with students. But we haven't yet seen the transition from those dissertations turning into the peer-reviewed pieces or the articles in research journals.
But we should see that, I would think, in the coming years. We should see a lot more of that. And I see a couple mentioned here already, and I'm not surprised about that, because this is information that is really important to us as we turn to online learning and blended and hybrid. So I'm not surprised to see that there's some good work being done. So on to takeaway number 2. This is an interesting one for us. We found that this dueling thought, as on one hand, students find instructors and instructor involvement to be essential, kind of like a blankie. But in many ways, they feel that they ultimately determine their own success. And we have 91.1% of students, this is the majority of students, stated that instructor involvement is very important to their online learning. Yet, on the other hand, many call themselves the most important part of the process. If you remember the quote I just read, you have to be on top of everything. They feel that it's their key to the process. And if I switch ahead here, the interesting thing is, in the same takeaway, and I know we're switching to teacher information here, but we just find it so interesting because teachers feel, of course, that they are what is the key to the successful online learning process. And they feel very strongly about that. And students feel very strongly that they are. And I would mention that I think that's what makes this so powerful in a way, that each feels a sense of responsibility and ownership in the process, and that really combines to make a more successful learning experience. The challenge in that second bullet is to really determine what those roles and responsibilities are, and to think about when the contact hours are, what the expectation is at 2 o'clock in the morning when some students like to work, how quickly they can respond, what contractual obligations an online teacher may have with their face-to-face responsibilities. There are a number of different roles and responsibilities to consider for everyone. Here's a student comment. Instructor involvement is very important because she's the one who tells us how and what to do, when to do it, what to include, etc. She is our guide, so we learn properly, and she also provides the knowledge we need to succeed in the course. She is also the most helpful person available. And then finally, our third takeaway is that administrators can ease that student through the transition. And Tiffany alluded to this with her question earlier, with orientation, training, and how-to videos. And we have the results from our survey were that 73.3% of students stated that they did not have anyone to teach them these strategies or skills. And a number of them alluded to how difficult it was to get started. And what their expectations were is that they would sit down and be able to start right away. Whereas an adult learner, I know that there's always going to be something that goes wrong in the process, which is today. And that we persevere through, but we also give us the time, the extra time that we need. And students don't always have the skills, the project management and skills and time management skills to be able to do that. And that should be part of what's incorporated in this professional development opportunity. So here's the voice of the students again. One challenge I've experienced is navigating around and getting to know how your teacher wants things. Here's another. It is really hard doing NCVPS for the first time while having no clue what to do. And that's speaking to that high percentage of students who are taking a course for the very first time and need a little bit more information and help to get over that opening hurdle and to be able to continue with the online learning experience. And with that, Amy's going to tell us a little more about our future research areas and our next step.
Thanks, Amy. I also wanted to follow up with one more thought about the takeaway number 3 and the comment about students not stating that they don't have anyone to teach them strategies. This is one of the contextual pieces about the North Carolina Virtual Public School, is that they are working with the districts so that the school districts and the North Carolina Virtual Public School work together to provide this education to the students. And so there are some local educational authorities, or we call them LEAs. There's some LEAs that provide training and in-building support for their online students and have that opportunity, and there are others who don't or cannot or don't have the resources to be able to provide that. And so I know in our conversations with some of the administration of the North Carolina Virtual Public School, the idea that there are some modules, some pieces, some ways that the North Carolina Virtual Public School can help develop materials for the districts to share. You know, there are 100 counties in North Carolina, and then there are districts that are outside of those counties or combined, consolidated districts as well. But there are many different entities that are utilizing across the state the courses of the North Carolina Virtual Public School, and that's one of the challenges, is being able to help the districts become more involved. So specifically thinking about things that we've learned from this study and things that we are exploring further and things that we're interested in continuing to explore, one of the challenges we have had is that it is very difficult for us to get student voice outside of the survey. We've offered opportunities for focus groups and for interviews, and it's difficult, challenging to get them to participate in those. And so that's one of the things, especially thinking about accessing the students. We access them for the survey, we access through their course sites. And so one thing that we've considered is going from the direction of the district. So for example, we did a study last summer of those students here in my district who were taking credit recovery courses online during summer school to specifically access them. We still had a challenge getting students being willing to talk to us. So any great ideas you have about getting students to talk to you is wonderful, because we find that there's only so much they'll tell us in a survey without a lot of detail. And so we want to get more detail and get more information. As we've mentioned a couple of times, we are doing a new survey of North Carolina Virtual Public Schools this month. We sent that off very recently to the administration to get their approval, and we hope that will be going out here very shortly. It's not the same survey as before, because we've learned a few things, and they'll be changing it a little bit. However, so for example, one of those changes is that on the original survey, we asked for, what do you think are the benefits, what do you think are the challenges, open-ended. And so what we've been able to do is to do coding of their open-ended responses and then actually develop a list of 8 to 10 of the most commonly reported benefits and challenges, and asking them in this survey to check all that apply and then provide others. So there's some things like that we've been able to streamline the survey, and hopefully the students might be more apt to actually give us some more information. Another question we have is, as you know, more and more students in North Carolina are taking online courses. There's a policy in play at the state level that starting with this year's middle school students, by the time they graduate from high school, they should have taken one complete online class. So we're wondering, have perspectives shifted? And as North Carolina Virtual Public School has changed their practices and offered more training, for example, for districts and teachers, what has shifted on that end as well? We're also very interested in connecting this research to other schools and to practice at NCVPS. We believe firmly as researchers that research and practice are intertwined, just like our benefits and challenges perhaps, and that we should have our research inform practice and should have our practice inform research. And so thinking about the specifics of the North Carolina Virtual Public School, where students are taking a class here or there, that's different from a school where students are taking all of their classes online, or is it? And so the question remains for us is what are the differences? Are there differences between students who are taking all their courses online and students who are taking one or two courses online? Different needs, different challenges, different perspectives, and different expectations, perhaps, of their learning experiences. As I mentioned, some of the local educational authorities have a tighter connection with the North Carolina Virtual Public School than others. And so understanding how different those local educational authorities are utilizing NCVPS is very helpful as well. And then specifically around focus, if you think specifically about credit recovery students, for example, most of the North Carolina Virtual Public School classes that are credit recovery, where students have failed a class and are trying to regain that credit, most of those are self-paced, so the student is working towards mastery. And when they demonstrate mastery in their content, they move on to the next level of content. They demonstrate mastery, they move on to the next level of content. So what about those students and their needs? And their needs in the online learning environment, but they're also their needs for support and the fact that they're in this course because they failed it previously. What does that mean for the interactions between teacher and student, for example, or student and student? So those are just some of the thoughts that we have as we're thinking about where we're headed next and what we're continuing to explore. And we're really looking forward to the second survey that goes out, to getting another updated look at the students at the North Carolina Virtual Public School and different aspects of their perceptions and expectations and the work that they're doing in their schools. We've provided here our contact information, our email addresses. Again, I'm Amy Garrett-Dickers. I'm at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. Amy Whiteside is at the University of Tampa, and our colleague, Summer Lewis, who is unable to be with us today, is also at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. We also have, at the bottom of this slide, two of our recent publications. The top one is about the North Carolina Virtual Public School teachers and students survey specifically related to the social presence model, and this is a model that Amy developed through her dissertation work and that we've been exploring in different online and blended contexts. And that was published in the Journal of Interactive Online Learning just this past winter. Although I guess we're still in winter. We have a couple more days till spring. And the second one is the North Carolina Virtual Public School Teacher Data Overall. And that was published in Learning and Leading with Technology, which is an ISTE publication. So we'll leave it there. We have some time for questions. We specifically wanted to focus again on those three key takeaways in order to provide that time for questions. So we'll leave it up to Catherine. I know you've been monitoring the chat box, and you can get us up to speed on what the participants' questions are.
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
First, Amy, yes, I can hear you, Catherine. Can I say one thing?
Okay, of course, yeah.
I'm noticing several comments about how teachers are choosing to get information from students in their classrooms, which is nice. Several people mentioned that students are opening up and sharing everything on their mind at that point. So I wanted to make sure Amy heard that as well, so we can consider that.
Great, thank you, Amy.
Thank you. for sharing that information. I wanted to ask you to talk a little bit about this. A lot of times we have a lot of practitioner researchers who are getting ready to do their dissertation and need guidance in terms of if their participants are students in K-12 schools. How do you go about the institutional review board and getting access to interview the students or survey the students? If you can talk a little bit about that just to kind of give a perspective. And I know it kind of differs state to state, district to district, but can you talk a little bit about your experiences with that?
Sure. This is Amy Garrett-Dickers. I'll tackle this question at this moment. With the North Carolina Virtual Public School, they do have a research review process underway, and what that involves is answering some questions about the research, giving a basic overview of the research, the problem that you're studying, your methodology for wanting to study the problem, and filling out a form that explains in brief what your research is. And then there's one individual who gathers all those materials and then takes them to the administrative team. And the administrative team reviews those and then makes decisions and has those conversations with individual researchers. At the moment, I don't believe it's a set like first of the month or anything like that, a set date with that, but I do expect that there's just speaking locally here in North Carolina, our school districts are becoming more and more aware of the need to at least be aware of the research that's going on in the schools and in the districts, and know centrally who's in the building, what the research studies are, and hopefully gather some of those materials so that they can disseminate that with the district. The other piece of that puzzle is, principals. I think our district specifically has had people approach principals and say, hey, can I survey your teachers? And then the teachers get overloaded, or they're surveying teachers at a time when they're trying to do assessments. I know my local districts here are becoming more aware and making sure that they're making more that the research that's being conducted needs to happen in a certain fashion. Sometimes they make suggestions about, well, could you do this with a survey, or could you wait until, don't do this in April because April's testing month, and those kinds of things.
Great, thanks so much for answering that question. I have a question here from Matt, what was the main challenge that teachers faced?
I missed that, Catherine. Can you repeat that? Or maybe
sure. What was the main challenge that teachers faced?
Well, we do have teacher research. This is mostly on the student perspective, but on the teacher side, the main challenge that they face. I haven't looked over that data for quite a while since we were focusing on the students today, but I think one of the challenges that I remember is just trying to initially find their roles, how much they need to do versus how much the students need to do, and how to negotiate that with the students. Amy, do you remember any big teacher findings, I guess, from the teacher study?
Similar. They actually talk about some of the similar challenges to our students. Sometimes they also have time management issues because they are, of course, in most cases working in a face-to-face building as well. The challenges that they've talked about that, again, connect with the student challenges is that because, as Amy alluded, they are under contract with the district, when they have the approval of their district to teach an NCVPS course, they actually have to ask for that approval. Part of that approval process is that they will not be making contact with NCVPS students during the face-to-face school day. So they have to wait until after the school day is ended before they can contact their online students. And so a lot of times online students are working at a study hall. They have third hour where they don't go to class because they have online third hour. And so they go to the study hall, they go to the library, or they go to the lab and they have a question, but they can't get an immediate response because the teacher, who's the online teacher, but teaching at the high school down the street, can't actually respond to them during the day. So they talked about some of those challenges where they feel like on one side they're always on call, they're always present in the classroom, but on the other side that they're not able to be there to answer students as quickly as they sometimes would like to because of that contractual responsibility. They also talked a lot about their challenges with connecting with the students and connecting with the local education authorities. As we all know, sometimes it's hard to get people to answer your emails or to respond to your phone calls if they're trying to connect with the district to get information. And then also part of the North Carolina Virtual Public Schools requirements of the teachers is that they make synchronous contact with their students on a weekly basis. And they see that as a benefit because they know they get in touch with their students and their family members and talk to their parents and actually sometimes know more about their students in the online space than they do in the face-to-face because they do have that regular contact. But it's a challenge because they sometimes can't make those connections.
Great. Thanks so much for answering that for Raina. We also had a question from Beth who was asking about whether or not you could share the survey that you created or if that's copyrighted.
That's a great question. I don't think that we've talked about it as a research team, so we would need to talk about it as a research team and determine whether we can and will share that information. But mostly we're very open to sharing information. It's just that it's something we need to decide on as a team.
Yeah, I second that. And we have several variations of this survey depending, sometimes it changes slightly depending on the context of the population of students that we're surveying. For example, we were just at a blended learning high school in Huntley, Illinois last week looking at their blended learning model, and there are similar aspects to the survey that we developed for that as there are to this survey. So I guess we'll definitely have to talk to that. Thank you for the question.
Great, that's awesome. If you do want to share it out, please feel free to send it along whenever you're done thinking about that. We have Chris's question is about, have you been looking at funding students? North Carolina is state funded, ? What does a course cost, year-long, semester, and what is the student to teacher ratio?
Those questions change the answers to those questions change as do how do we fund our schools every year. The North Carolina Virtual Public School is state funded. My understanding is there's a specific budget line from the Department of Public Instruction and the legislature, connected to the legislature, that goes directly to North Carolina Virtual Public School. And in the last year, don't quote me on that year, maybe 2 years, they've moved from a model where from districts having a certain number of slots that they could fill with online students at the North Carolina Virtual School to actually having to pay for each individual seat. I do not know the numbers of how much that costs. And I believe the student-to-teacher ratio information also varies depending on the course, the AP course versus an elective course versus a Spanish 1 versus an English course. And I believe there's also some differences with credit recovery versus traditional, but I don't have those numbers right with me.
Too bad Summer isn't here. She would have them at the ready, but that's information that we could be able to find and find out if that's okay for us to post.
Okay, great. I have a question here from Mary Lou, and I might need a little bit more context, Mary Lou, because I think you're probably 2 minutes. You're question was 2 minutes ago. So she asked, do you have some tools and references that would be helpful to use to meet this need? Mary Lou, or if Amy, if you know what that is in context, do go ahead and answer. If not, Mary Lou, if you can provide some more context for where that question was.
Mary, would you tell us a little bit more?
Yes, while the webinar was going, I just quickly looked up the reference for the article, Virtual High School Teacher and Student Reactions to Social Presence, and just reading quickly the conclusion. And the conclusion talks about the importance of literacy akin to any influential literacy, such as tech literacy, rhetorical literacy, media literacy, etc. That really, for social presence, is a different type of literacy, and that teachers were needing professional development. And that's exactly the need that I'm looking for in my school. And so just wondering if you have some resources that could support that.
Well, certainly all the references in that particular article will help you, and the definition of social presence and understanding what social presence is, and specifically to tools and references. One of the things that we found is that knowing, first of all, not being tool-centered and really trying to understand what the pedagogical or the curricular need is, and to be driven by that is ultimately important. And secondly, at the same time, to know a lot of genres, at least the tools out there, and to be able to critical think what is the best genre of tools or tools for that particular curricular need. Is that closer to what you're thinking, Mary? Does that help you?
Yes, that's a good start. I appreciate there's a long list of resources there, so I just thought you might have a favorite or two.
I'm sure we have many favorites. I kind of hate to mention them specifically out of context, because a lot of times we find that there are, you know, if I said wikis, you might just hook on to wikis, but it is that contextual curricular need that should drive it. Amy, can you think of a particular context or anything that you'd like to add, Mary Lou?
Well, I was just going to put a plug in, Mary Lou, for we just had an article accepted to EDUCAUSE, which is oriented towards higher education.
Yes.
But specifically in that article, and it's, I believe, coming out in the April issue of the EDUCAUSE Review online, April or May, the May issue, that article specifically is geared towards some key strategies that you can use to build social presence and what those strategies are. And it's more, again, as Amy's mentioned, aligned with the strategies as to building community, providing social spaces, and then some mention of tools that may help do those things. But that is coming out in May, and so perhaps when that does come out, we could add that to the Research and Review blog that Catherine does, just to have that out there as a new piece of information.
And that's the journal. I'm not familiar with it. I'm sorry about that. But EDUCAUSE, E-D-U-C-A-U-S-E, EDUCAUSE?
Yes.
Correct. EDUCAUSE Review online.
Thank you very much. That's a good start.
Great. Thank you so much. Anybody else have any further questions for Amy and Amy? Or Amy and Amy, if you have any questions to pose to the audience, feel free.
Well, I want to thank everybody for their time and patience as I've gone on today, and we just encourage you to contact us as you have questions. And again, we just appreciate your time.
I'll second that as well. We especially appreciate the opportunity to hear from you, the different things that you're doing, and one of the things that we enjoy so much about any of these professional opportunities, of course, is that we come together from many different perspectives and many different contexts, and so it's nice to have that mix in the room, the virtual room, and so we appreciate your participation and attendance, and we welcome any conversation to come in the future.
Great. Amy and Amy, if you could put your email addresses in the chat box as well, that would be helpful just in case people want to email you right away. Great, thank you. Unfortunately, the PowerPoints are not copy and paste able. Well, it looks like we don't have any further questions now, but if you do, please feel free to email Amy and Amy. We will be sending out the link to the recording just in case you'd like to re-review or share it with others. And we'll also have the link to the PowerPoint slides as well. Again, if you do have any questions, feel free to email me if you need to, kkennedy@mivu.org. Thanks so much again, Drs. Amy Garrett-Dickers and Amy Whiteside, for presenting your research today. And thank you all for joining us for today's webinar. Again, if you'd like to be added to the email list for future webinar announcements and other research opportunities, please add your email address in the chat area, or you can email me directly at kkennedy@mivu.org. Thanks so much again, and have a great rest of your March.
Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks, Catherine.